Hey guys, welcome to the Supplement Engineer podcast. In today's episode, I sit down with Matt Titlow of Compound Solutions. We discuss the origin of Compound Solutions, beginning with Matt's father starting the company, where they're headed in the next 5 years, what it takes to be successful, a typical day in Matt's busy life, and what are some of the future endeavors that Compound Solutions has coming up. Stick around and enjoy the episode.
Well, thanks for being here, Matt.
Hello. Thank you.
So I always like to start these things off with the origin story. So how did you come to start Compound Solutions? What's the goal of the company? What's your history in the industry? And start there.
Let's do it. Actually, my father started it, and it was 20 years ago, almost to the day. And he started off mostly in kind of amino acids, but not for sports nutrition. So think like what would go into an infant formula, what would go into the mass market for like I said, infant formula, but also maybe something for like joint health, for example, like that you'd see in Costco or something like that. So very food, drug, mass, commodity-based, things of that sort. And then about 15 years ago, I got into it, and about maybe 14, 15 years ago, so, right after I started, essentially, I saw that sports nutrition was starting to take off. And it was right around this time that NO Explode was starting to, excuse the pun, but explode or do well, right? And so I wanted to get into that. And it was probably shortly thereafter that I saw some potential with beta-alanine. And my father happened to know the owner of Natural Alternatives, Mark Ledoux, or CEO, or both, I think, owner and CEO. And at that time, and he had a patent on beta-alanine. Well, we became the commercialization partner for carnosine beta-alanine.
Right.
And I personally was very adamant and instrumental and forceful about trying to get that into the market. And that was probably an 8-9 year relationship, somewhere around, along those lines. And we built that into, as you see now, carnosine's in most major pre-workouts in the world.
Yes.
And after that, it was TeaCrine, if I'm not mistaken, was the next ingredient that made a mark, and that was probably 4 years ago, more or less, roughly speaking.
Yeah, that's probably when it exploded, was right then.
Yeah, and then and now we're here today. So it was really kind of brought in, honestly, due to just to really, obviously my father was in it, and I was actually going to go after business school work for Miller Brewing Company, believe it or not, and I decided not to do that and come work in the supplement industry, and it's about maybe 4 years ago we just kind of started a new vision to maximize human potential. That means cognitively and physically, and that's why we kind of have a range of ingredients that really target those two areas. One might be like Pico 2 for a physical endurance, for example, but one might be nootropic like for cognitive enhancement, like a TeaCrine or a Dinamite. So that's the origin.
Fascinating. So y'all partnered with carnosine for a while, and then you released Pico 2. Do you still, how is that, how do you attack that, or how do you approach that subject of, do you still view carnosine as useful, or is that more of the old school way of doing things, and Pico 2 is the way consumers should be going forward?
Yeah, I actually think it's both. So for example, if you look at what beta-alanine does, the positive is that over time it works. The positive, the negative, the time.
Right.
Yeah, it takes a long time. Like you got to get something like 179 grams, and loaded in your system before you get those those clinical benefits.
Correct.
The positive is that you get clinical benefits.
Right.
It just takes a while.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the mechanisms and you look at the verticals on like why something works, like a pre-workout, for example, or like why muscles fail, for example, one of those is hydrogen ions.
Right.
Well, carnosine, so beta-alanine converting to carnosine neutralizes those hydrogen ions. Well, Pico 2 neutralizes some lactate. It kind of prevents the lactate, and excess lactate is what is, oftentimes, spinning off excess hydrogen ions. In other words, they can complement each other.
Yes.
Now, if I had to choose one, frankly, I'd choose Pico 2. Well, the reason is just because it just takes less time. Like literally, it's 28 grams of a load versus 179. So just from a timing and dosing standpoint, I just want stuff faster.
Right.
I also found anecdotally and actually clinically that you just get more power and endurance from Pico-2 than you do get from beta-alanine. That said, in my personal opinion, if you could do both, they're complementary, because one is, let's say, decreasing the lactate associated with, an acidified muscle, like you're exercising, and one is decreasing the hydrogen ions that would be associated with excess lactate. So I think they can actually complement each other. So yeah, if I were choosing, I would choose Pico-2. But if I could do both, I would probably do both for two reasons. One is a potential complementary action, and the second reason is marketing. Like flat out, the consumers believe that you need beta-alanine in the product.
Yes. Yeah.
So, frankly speaking, man, it doesn't matter what I think; it matters what the consumer thinks.
Right.
So, got to sometimes match what the consumer wants.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would say the one thing, or one of the things that definitely elevates Pico-2 above beta-alanine is that I think it's more versatile of an ingredient for the average athlete or lifter. That beta-alanine is you really only start to see benefit when you're exercising continuously for over, say 45 to 60 seconds, where Pico-2 improves VO2 kinetics, improves power output and strength, which is going to be in that shorter time frame, which more of the ballistic activity, which is going to be ATP driven, and beta-alanine, which is going to be more endurance-based activity. So I think that's why I like Pico-2. But one of the challenges with that ingredient in particular is flavoring. So how do you advise companies on how to go about flavoring some of these difficult to cover up ingredients? Because TeaCrine and Dinamite, now that y'all come out with a 40% yield,
right,
which is better to deal with, because the original TeaCrine was rough. I had tried 1 or 2 pre-workouts that had the original TeaCrine in before the buffered form came around. But what do you give them ideas on how to flavor, or do you just leave that to them and say, hey, here's your Pico-2, go off and do as you will?
No, that's a secret sauce. We don't just say, look, it's in stock and buy it.
Yeah.
That's where maybe other people. We can't do that. We can't leave our clients hanging. So, no, what we do is, we get involved in like the nuts and bolts. Like sometimes things aren't sexy. What you do is you just put it in water and stir it and drink it, and then decide, what flavor system might work with that. That's just pragmatism. Just put stuff in a cup and look at it. Like come on, just do some grunt work here. So the fact is that at about 2 grams, you end up having sometimes a little bit too much color associated with Pico-2. It can be a little brown, a little earthy, etc.
Right. Yeah.
At 1 gram, it's actually quite light in terms of the color. And why I'm describing color is because, do you want like a brown lemon lime flavor? Right?
Yeah, we eat with our eyes first. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, obviously the color yellow doesn't taste like lemon. Like you don't lick your yellow wall and go, wow, that tastes like lemon. But the point is the consumer is expecting lemon lime to be yellow, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, it's lemon lime, even if it's colorless, isn't expecting to be brown. So, to that point, and let's call it 8 ounces of water, you're good at about 1 gram. At about 1.5 grams, I think you're still good. It might be a little too brown and a little too earthy, perhaps, at 2 grams. You can probably go to 10 ounces, 12 ounces, and make that happen.
Yeah.
So from a practical standpoint, you're probably, 2 grams is probably kind of the upward limit for a pragmatic sort of product.
Yeah.
And if you did that, you'd probably need some sort of an opaque color. So think of like Grape Extend.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that.
Right.
Where it's dark and it'd work and the flavor is pretty strong. But if you're looking at something kind of like isotonic, like a Gatorade,
right,
sort of a lighter flavor, then yeah, you're probably at 1 gram. The positive is that you just have to get to 28 grams of Pico-2.
Yeah.
That could be at 1 gram a day. It can be at 2 grams a day.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go 1 or 2, you're still good. Using Pico-2, you still get statistically significant results in power and endurance. So,
are there any? I know y'all did the initial study with the University of North Carolina. How many subsequent studies have there been? Are there any currently in the works for it?
We did one other, and it was at the University of Charleston, and that's the one that followed in terms of dosing. So the first University of North Carolina, that was 4 grams.
Right.
University of Charleston, or College of Charleston, had 2 dose groups, one at 1 gram and one at 2 grams,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that we got clinical benefits at lower dosing.
Yeah.
And those are the two, and both are published, and there are none in the works at this time.
Okay. Now, when the studies are going on, do y'all fund those? Do y'all source grants to do those? What goes into funding and getting a study started to show the proven benefits, or what would become the proven benefits of an ingredient? Can you walk us through that process of how you get started and get rolling?
Yeah, the typical method is to co-fund with partners.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take TeaCrine. All that's been essentially 50-50.
Mm-hmm. With the ingredient maker,
with the ingredient,
or the
IP holder.
Right.
So
yeah,
the TeaCrine, that is not quote unquote our ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
We are the commercialization partner.
Right.
But they are the intellectual property holder, patent holder. So essentially, we co-funded it. Compound Solutions and our partner, and that's typical. In Pico 2's case, believe it or not, they funded the whole thing. So God bless them. I mean, they obviously great partners, but yeah, they were 100% responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe every other ingredient. Oh, I lied. Carb 10, we've funded that 100%. So it depends.
Yeah.
But for the majority,
mm-hmm.
it's been co-funded.
For the listeners out there that might not understand all the challenges that go into setting up a study, because they assume whenever they see ingredients, they'll say, well, there's no human studies on this. There's not enough data to support this use.
Right.
Can you detail a little bit more of the specific challenges that go with setting up the thing and the actual burden of cost that goes into funding a study and sourcing candidates for it and aligning with universities and all of that?
Absolutely. I think this is a really major point. And I think if we just cut this part out, I think this could be a podcast or a point in and of itself. Is just the ideology versus pragmatism issue in studies. So, for example, we'd all love to say that we had 1,000 subjects
mm-hmm.
and that we had double-blind crossover, placebo-controlled studies.
Right.
And there were 4 groups, 250 people each,
mm-hmm.
and it was all in humans, and we had 3 of those, and we could infer something fantastic from that.
Yeah.
But the fact is that in nutraceuticals,
mm-hmm.
dietary supplements, margins are very, very tight. They are not very good. You don't make a lot of money,
mm-hmm.
right, relative to the pharmaceutical industry.
Right, and you're talking about on a per ingredient basis or per tub of pre-workout basis?
All of it.
All of it. Okay.
So the whole supply chain. So the actual manufacturer of the actual raw material
mm-hmm.
doesn't make as much as he makes in active pharmaceutical ingredients. The distributor
mm-hmm.
does not make as much as the distributor of active pharmaceutical ingredients.
Okay.
The actual marketer, Pfizer, whatever, makes more than a nutraceutical. Because Pfizer does a lot of its manufacturing.
Right.
So on the manufacturing side, Pfizer makes more. On the marketing side, Pfizer makes more. So throughout the entire supply chain, no one makes probably even 10%
mm-hmm.
the margin that is made in each of those verticals
mm-hmm.
of a pharmaceutical. Now, in a pharmaceutical, you have a lot more risk-reward.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you can spend a lot
mm-hmm.
and get nothing because you have to spend millions in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, clinical trials.
Yes.
And you have to get there before you realize, we should actually crush this whole kind of pathway of thought.
Mm-hmm.
So you spend a whole lot of money. Now, if you land and you go through to fruition here,
mm-hmm.
and you launch a pharmaceutical, then the ROI is absolutely staggering. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the risk reward that's much greater in pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in nutraceuticals, the margins are quite a bit smaller. So that's why you see a bunch of animal studies. You see, clinical studies with 20 people,
mm-hmm.
With 30 people, with 50 people, not with 3,000 people, 10,000 people. It's for this exact reason.
Yeah, and how often are you going to get 3,000 people that just sign up to go in a metabolic ward or something and have every detail of their daily lives, meticulously tracked for 3, 12, 48 weeks or something like that?
You hit it on the head. So just so the listeners have some semblance of cost, to make an ingredient become generally recognized as safe
mm-hmm.
for us. That means nothing's ever been done. There's been no human clinicals, and you're kind of starting from scratch, is you probably need about $500,000, to commercialize that.
Wow.
That's minimum. So we spent well over $1 million. We're probably up to about 1.3, 1.5 million on just TeaCrine itself. Dinamite will be 600,000 just to get a modicum of like toxicity data and efficacy data that allows you to send it to a firm that has scientists, and they literally rule on whether that safety data allows it to be considered generally recognized as safe, which means it is safe for human consumption at 100 times the safe dose.
Wow. So okay, somebody really ODs on something and they take a lot of pre-workout, they won't, go off the deep end or something.
So one side is the money, right? We just said like 500,000 is kind of that's with no prior science. If you can borrow some science, in other words, something's in the public domain in rats saying that the rats didn't die at a certain dose, that's fantastic, right? You can use that. You can
so
borrow
LD50 data is published or something along those lines.
Right, it's published and you can use that, and you don't have to do an LD50 test, for example. Now, if you're talking about commercialization or more like on the safety side, it's not just about safe. It's about safe at 100 times that dose. In other words, if caffeine were not grandfathered in as a dietary supplement or part of the food supply, that would be illegal. And here's why. If you take 100 milligrams of caffeine, okay, that's not a big dose. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, maybe your standard cup of coffee that you get at Starbucks or something.
Yeah, that's a standard cup of coffee, and everyone's cool with that. No big deal. Not 100 times that. 10 times that. A gram in a single dose, depending on who you are, it could kill you.
Yeah, it's going to light most people, the average person, it would light them up.
It would light them up, but some people, could literally die on a gram of caffeine in one single dose. Not everyone, but it can happen.
Yeah.
So at 100 times, I would say probably 100% of people die immediately on 100 times 100 milligrams.
Yeah, so 10 grams of caffeine.
You would die, right?
Yeah.
So TeaCrine at 125 milligrams is generally recognized as safe. But we found in our toxicity data that the rats had no adverse event at 100 times that dose. And we have to do the exact same with Dinamite and everything else that becomes generally recognized as safe.
Yeah.
Here's a short answer. Is it is almost impossible to get grass
for most compounds.
Because almost every compound is creates some sort of adverse event at 100 times your dose. Like even if I had 100 times 8 ounces of water, that's a whole lot of water. I don't want to take 100 times 8 ounces. Like almost everything has an adverse event.
Right.
So that's why it was so extraordinary to get grass on TeaCrine. And now Dinamite is showing in early toxicity data to be as safe or safer than TeaCrine. It is truly remarkable.
Is there something unique about those molecules in and of themselves that makes them translate so well to being taken in higher doses?
Yeah, that's a question for, Dr. Hector Lopez. But, yeah, it has to do with, call it like allosteric modulation.
Yeah.
But frankly speaking, I don't know the technical details of that.
Yeah.
I just, I just know enough to be dangerous.
Do we see, because most of the doses that we've seen, it's a yield of about 100 to 150 milligrams in the products that we're seeing TeaCrine and Dinamite both in. And when you combine them with caffeine, you can obviously get away with a little bit less, in the 50 to 75 milligram range potentially. But do you see, given that the GRAS status is that much higher to where you can tolerate 100 times 100, so you could tolerate a considerable amount, do you think supplement formulators should consider significantly upping the dose to where you get a yield of, say, like 300 milligrams of Dinamite or TeaCrine in the supplement? Or is it do you still find the best effects, I guess, in personal anecdotal experience with sticking around that 100 to 150 milligram range?
Yeah, I would stick with caffeine and 100, 150 personally, but here's why. and this is the uniqueness behind TeaCrine and the patents, and the non-obviousness, is it's actually a bell curve of efficacy. In other words, there's a point at which you get diminishing marginal returns, and then it starts going in the opposite direction. So at about 300 milligrams, there is no more benefit. At 200 to 300 milligrams, you had diminishing marginal returns. In other words, let's say you went from like 100 to 200 milligrams. Let's say you got 100% better. Let's just say. But from 200 to 300 milligrams, you got, let's say, 10% better.
Okay,
in
so
other words,
marginal increase.
So you went up 50% in dose, but you only got 10% better in efficacy, for example.
Yeah.
So you just the benefit continued, but it was just to a lesser extent when you went from 200 to 300. And then after 300, there was no actual future benefit.
Yeah.
So actually, no, I wouldn't keep going. That's part of the uniqueness of the discovery.
Yeah.
Is a lot of people think, well, if 1 is good, 10 is better. Actually, no. Not with TeaCrine.
Right.
So if you're using TeaCrine alone, 200 milligrams is the ideal dose. It's a sweet spot. If you're using it in combination with caffeine, then yeah, probably something like 125, something like that is a really great dose. And me personally, some people might think, oh man, does he take his own stuff? I literally walk around in my bag. Like this second, I can open up my bag. I have little baggies, no joke, of TeaCrine capsules of 125 mg. And I have them in my car, in my bag, I have them on my desk, because I cannot stand caffeine without TeaCrine anymore. Because I just realized I don't have to crash. And I'm like, why the hell am I crashing? So I'm just like, I would rather just be exhausted and miserable than take just pure caffeine, like a Red Bull, a Monster, whatever. Yeah. And I always drop, me personally, because we all are different metabolizers of caffeine. Man, 2 hours later, I just feel like worse than baseline. So I'd just rather feel miserable now, and for like the next, who knows, 5 hours before I sleep, than, feel good for, an hour and then just feel like absolute trash for the rest of the day. So I combine at all times. I combine, like literally all times. I have TeaCrine with.
I do as well. I've got a bottle. It's a white bottle. It's got some gold label. I guess it's what y'all might send to supplement companies or whatever as the samples or whatever. But I've got bottles of 125 milligram TeaCrine capsules. I take one of those every morning, right when I wake up, and then I'll take my nootropics a little bit later on. I'm getting ready to go write and work for the day, and just I live on that stuff. So I'm glad I have a few bottles of that lying around the apartment. But that for just to compare that one to Dinamite, I don't know if just the way that they're molecularly different, but TeaCrine has always felt so much better for me just based on anecdotal response than Dinamite does, and I have no idea why that is, because they're basically the same thing. There's just you've got a methyl group that's moved, and so it becomes methoxy, and so Dinamite's supposed to be a little bit harder hitting, a little bit faster acting, but I still find better effects just for me personally with TeaCrine. My wife, she is more of a Dinamite fan, but it's interesting how just even those little subtle changes from person to person are different. Yeah. And you mentioned Red Bulls and Monsters, and those obviously don't include TeaCrine. Right. What are some challenges? And what we've seen, some energy drinks come out, Hyde's ProSups or ProSups Hyde Power Potion. I believe has TeaCrine in it. Right. Does Bang have? Bang does not have TeaCrine in it.
Does, but Meltdown does.
Meltdown does, right. Yeah. Is that where you're kind of starting to try to position these ingredients? Is that they're ideal in the energy drink markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think any caffeine related product in which you want an extended period or duration of action and you don't want to crash is ideal. Well, that is kind of everywhere. Like no one really wants to crash, and to have more in terms of longer is, in my opinion, usually what people want. That's usually what I want. Yeah. If I had like 2 hours of energy or 5, I'll take 5.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So fast forward, energy drinks and nootropics, the gaming market, absolutely. This is ideal because people don't usually game for 30 minutes.
It's hours and hours.
It could be hours, And you're looking at the dopamine activation. If you're inside, you're not getting a lot of vitamin D. This is an ideal supplement. TeaCrine is for that target market. you need, dopamine for mood motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You need extended duration of action because you're gaming for a long period of time. I think it's ideal for those sorts of people. Now, for the bodybuilding industry and that sort of stuff,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fantastic because it potentiates that caffeine. There's an increase in energy, mood, focus.
Correct.
And that's great. And we've tested it. You even have an increase in time to exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, if you were, running, for example, or CrossFitting or something like that,
right.
It's fantastic. But the truth is, I agree. This is a new and potent target market of
mm-hmm.
gaming, energy drinks, etc.
Yeah. Is there any risk, I guess, of dopamine depletion? Because both caffeine and TeaCrine stimulate the dopamine receptors to release more dopamine in the body.
Yeah.
But without, I guess, a substrate like L-dopa or L-tyrosine, you're not supplying any more of the substrate that the body uses to produce dopamine. So is there any risk of that, or have you all come across, or I don't even know if that's even been looked into?
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess most people that drink pots and pots of coffee every day long aren't suffering from dopamine depletion. So
no, we did have, the only thing I can really point to is safety data, and it is generally recognized as safe.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't, anything noticed toxicity wise. But no, we don't know if, I don't know, 50 years of, say coffee is going to lead to, let's say, dopamine depletion, or 50 years of TeaCrine
right.
can lead to dopamine depletion. Or I'm exaggerating because to say, what if we did it daily for a long time?
Yeah, and without getting in all of the other essential amino acids you need to do that.
That said, I do get from TeaCrine a much greater dopamine activation than I do from tyrosine, for example. You mentioned
mm-hmm.
that as a substrate.
Yeah.
And with TeaCrine, or with caffeine, it's an indirect activation, and I don't really get like a mood enhancement too much with caffeine, but I do from TeaCrine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the actual specialness in TeaCrine and Dinamite.
Yeah.
Is this right here? Is, you take caffeine, it's more of like a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
Like a boom, like here's some energy,
mm-hmm.
and honestly, it can be kind of awesome. Everyone's stoked about that.
Right.
And there's kind of, I guess, maybe a little bit of mood elevation associated with just like not being tired.
Yeah, you just perked up a little bit.
It's kind of like you're perked up kind of from the energy, but not say the mood.
Yeah.
You add TeaCrine, and then it's like, no man, I'm not just like energized. I actually feel good about the world a little bit, like kind of like my happy pill, So I think that's really where it's special, but no one really talks about it so much because we're just talking about STEM. Yeah. Like, what's your STEM matrix? Oh well, my STEM matrix is caffeine, Dinamite, TeaCrine, for example, or tyrosine, TeaCrine, caffeine, or something like that. But no one's like, man, I want to go deadlift 415. And I also want mood elevation. It's not cool, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, man, I really am stoked to see if I can, max out, today and see if I can feel better about the world.
They might need that mood elevation if they're on squats and they might wish they had that.
But the truth is that the mind's role in physical performance is super underrepresented. No Olympian is out there, going, well, I don't know, maybe I can do this.
Right.
No, man. If you don't think you can squat 415, you're not going to.
Exactly.
You're not going to squat.
Correct. Yeah. The body goes where the mind tells it.
Right. Exactly. And so, hence, you got coaches at the Olympic level. Kind of a mind over matter. Well, dopamine is your mind over matter. Neurotransmitter.
Right.
And I think this is a strong role for TeaCrine.
What do you see as the avenue or some of the challenges to getting TeaCrine more well known in the energy drink market? Since energy drinks, people love their caffeine. So what I guess could you do differently, more effectively, more efficiently to see TeaCrine within Red Bull's done it in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's about seeing it. You got to prove the concept, and these guys don't take risks anymore.
Right.
To start Monsters took a risk. To start Red Bull took a risk, but they're at a size where they
Yeah, they can do the same thing for the next 50 years and they'll be set.
Yes, and so you might not be the same thing, but they want to smooth the wheel. They don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
They don't want to create a new wheel. They just want to smooth it. So we have to be out there and prove the concept so that we are part of smoothing the wheel.
Yeah.
That means that it's a nice adjunct to Monster or Red Bull or whatever Rockstar. And it's just noticed. So you got to get it in other energy drinks. You got to get it in the nootropic space. You got to get in the biohacking space. You got to get in the sports space. You got to have so much momentum that, like, okay, fine, I agree. There's something to this.
Right.
So it's about just like, more and more and more concept. Just a moment. Yeah, so it's about the masses. Yeah, trying to get out to the masses.
Now with every compound solution does almost extensively licensed, patented, trademarked ingredients. And the market also has generics. So there's carnosine beta-alanine, and then you can find a generic beta-alanine. There's beta-power betaine, and then you'll find generic betaine, anhydrous betaine, hydrochloride.
Right.
So I'm assuming there is a generic TeaCrine molecule out there, and TeaCrine is a patented form of. How do y'all go about, I guess, convincing formulators and the general public that patented ingredients are the way to go compared to generics? Because if you're at the store and you see a bottle of the Centrum multivitamin for $15 and you see this generic store brand multivitamin, they have the same ingredients. On the surface, they probably do, but is there actually any difference in the bottle? So how do you get people to see more of the benefits of going with the name brand and patented forms of it?
Right. So one is just patent. So there's a legal obligation. That's one way, and that's why I think a lot of people, not just us, are going the patented route because frankly, you don't make money at commodities, and so everyone has to pay for shoes and a shirt and mortgages and you can imagine.
Right.
So how do you actually survive in the world? And we're talking the nutraceutical world. Well, on the distribution side, you got to have something that is value added. Well, that could be something that is patented with some clinicals behind it. That is where we shine. Okay, so frankly speaking, if it's a generic TeaCrine, we have to go out there and fight patent battles and legal battles and send cease and desist and things of that sort.
Yeah.
But let's say it's not that. Let's say it's just trademarked. That's it. Well, oftentimes we'll literally launch clinicals behind it so that you can actually have legal claims that are associated with just that form that enable you to get a little bit of a premium, not a lot of it, but a little bit of a premium. Now, let's say it's nothing and it's just trademarked. Well, then you actually it's a marketing play and you don't charge for that upcharge. You charge at essentially a commodity rate.
Okay.
That's another way of getting into the market with a little bit of a cachet, for the consumer. But the actual brand who's marketing that isn't really paying much more or any more than the commodity.
What would you say are some of the biggest challenges and hurdles you've had with Compound Solutions and running it? Because I get emails from you at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning sometimes. It seems like you're all over. You're in one city one week, you're in another continent the following week. So how do you juggle keeping the ship on its course but maintaining sanity and health and still trying to lead the way for the future of the supplement industry with new ingredients?
Yeah. Man, that's a loaded question, Robert. Man, I would say one is we have good people. I would say that's probably number one. We have a killer team.
How many people is Compound Solutions, by the way? Just rough idea.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's in the low 20s, like 23, 25.
I wasn't sure how big the company was. I've never been to California.
Yeah, we're lean and mean.
Yeah,
we're lean and mean. What was he saying? Oh, good people. That's one. I also have a right hand who, really runs the company for the most part, and I am quote unquote doing other things, and that means like the day-to-day, some day-to-day sales, looking for new ingredients, writing content, and sending that off to you, for example, or others to, see if it has merit, talking with partners. And then, I do have to then, frankly, my title is CEO, so I do have to then, get involved in certain, operational discussions as well. But in the end, it's good people, and then long hours. I like it. I do this, because I like it. If I didn't, I'd just do something else, frankly.
Right.
And we're in a position where we could do something else. The fact is, I don't want to. I like this.
Yeah.
This is fun. This is not. I'm not, quote unquote, working.
Right.
But I think everyone and your listeners should know. I think, and pretty much everyone should know that that the way we succeeded at Compound, the way I succeeded, was 80 hours a week for a decade. Right? That's how.
Yeah.
So that's not sexy.
Right.
So when you're up at like 2 or 3 in the morning or something like that, no one's helping you right then. Like, no one's available. That's you. It's you and your thoughts on your own and just grinding, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it can seem great, right? Because you look at like the success of TeaCrine, you look at the success of Carnison, you look at the success of like Go BHB, and it sounds like, God, that the end game was great, right? Like, look at that, like overnight success. Kind of no.
There's years and years of work behind that.
It was just a lot of work. So if anyone really wants to be successful, I would recommend just a lot of work, right? You can be smart, but there are a lot of smart people. I can actually physically name right now at least 5 people who are smarter than I like a lot smarter than I, who made connections, much quicker than I did in business school.
Yeah.
But I just grind it out. I just work. Okay, so fast forward. Zuckerberg, he's really, really rich, right? Bezos, he's really rich. But that shit just didn't happen. Right? So I want to just like pause just for a moment and just say, like, sure, we've had a decent amount of success here and there. But the fact is that it was actually, maybe a pretty good idea, but it was a lot of work with a pretty good idea. Not a really, really good idea, it was just, a modicum of work.
Right.
Like, Michael Jordan sitting on the couch doesn't win championships, right?
No.
You got to get out there and just make it happen.
Exactly.
TeaCrine wasn't just some like magic molecule that just sold itself and you just sat back and just watched it work.
Yeah.
So, I hopefully that didn't sound like a diatribe.
No, not at all.
Hopefully it sounded just like, no, man, just people just out there like really working hard, and let's work hard together.
What's a typical day for you entail? Say your typical day. So obviously you're in Austin today, but if you're in the office? What's your typical daily routine involve?
Talking. I'm just trying to think. The typical day would be something like I'm making some calls, driving into work.
Yeah.
And then I can't end the call in time to get inside the office. So I'm in front of the office in my car, on the call while my colleagues go, there he goes again. He's still on the phone. I then I get in the office and people are like, hey, what's going on? And I say hi.
Yeah.
And then I'm responding to text usually. I'm then making a few more phone calls. I'm then responding to colleagues and people via text, and then answering some questions from colleagues. And then I probably make more phone calls. And then toward the end of the day, I go, oh my gosh, I didn't finish responding to emails from yesterday. I haven't actually responded to any emails today. Who knows what the heck's in there? I really got to make this thing happen. Oh my gosh, so I get stressed out, and I see as many phone calls as I do as many emails as I can.
Yeah.
I then head home to be a dad and a husband, and I do that from probably like 6:30 to maybe 9:30, something like that.
Yeah.
And then from about 9:30 to like I don't know, sometime anywhere from like midnight to 3 a.m. I knock out all those emails that
More
I was
emails,
supposed,
yeah.
I was
That's when I get my
supposed
emails from
to
you.
do. I write, a lot of content that I was supposed to do. I
Yeah.
follow up with Europe, Australia, and China. Those sorts of follow up on that sort of stuff. And then I take my kids to school, the next morning and rock and roll. We do it again.
Do you?
Something
I'm not sure how old your kids are. Do you give them TeaCrine?
No.
No.
Because here's what I really believe. I believe we should be supplementing tomatoes, not French fries.
Yeah.
So if you have a clean diet of just fat and protein and less sugar, but carbs in the form of fiber, then we shouldn't need to be supplementing.
Yes.
Now, if you're trying to maximize cognitive and physical potential, like you're really trying to squat a lot of weight, or you're trying to run really fast, or you're trying to literally get another 2 hours of productivity out of the day, then I'm not gonna lie, that's a supplement. That can be really cool.
Yeah.
And I take supplements, and I believe in that. But frankly speaking, I don't think kids should be taking supplements.
I would agree.
And I think most people who aren't doing what I just said, probably shouldn't be either. We shouldn't be, ingesting, energy drinks at the rate that we are, for example.
Right.
What I really believe is in eating, whole foods where the ingredient is one item. Broccoli, carrots, things of this sort.
Yeah.
That's truly what I believe. And God, I would hope that our children, could get off some of the medications that they're on.
Well, the rates of childhood obesity and diabetes it's staggering.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
deplorable.
Yeah, and so really what I believe is that that the gut microbiome is really the second brain, and that if you're not eating a vegetable, which is leading to short chain fatty acids and certain benefits associated with that, meaning actual production of serotonin,
right,
actual production of dopamine, and having that travel up the vagus nerve to the brain.
Yep.
And the kid doesn't have that because, again, it's French fries and
Coca-Cola
and very like Coca-Cola and very inflammatory diets. If the child is doing that, well, then you're leading to kind of like a neurotransmitter imbalance, which is leading to like a broader word would be like psychoses, which is basically saying like some sort of like cognitive disorders, which means like attention deficit disorder and things like that. So I'm not saying that every case of ADHD or Alzheimer's or dementia or all these cognitive disorders are the result of
not eating enough broccoli or something.
Not eating enough broccoli. But I'm just saying it's definitely not helping.
Well, yeah, and I would agree.
Yeah, an inflammatory diet of French fries and Coke and no vegetables is it just stands to reason that it can't work if you just look at the history of human the human species. So I would say that yes, I believe in supplementation. I do it myself, but I would pray that we could start have a world in which kids are eating a more balanced diet with vegetables that leads to fewer considerations of supplements for kids.
Yeah. Well, that'll bring me to 2 points. First off, you mentioned reducing sugar intake, and Compound also makes Go BHB. Do you follow the ketogenic diet, or are you on the ketogenic? Have you ever experimented with it or anything like that?
I'm low carb, so not keto. And I think part of it is just because I don't need to. If I had cancer, for example, I'd be on the ketogenic diet in about 3.5 seconds. Right. Because I would want to be starving my tumor of glucose, for example. But I'm insulin sensitive. I have low blood sugar. I'm generally healthy. So I just on average have a lower carb diet, trying to limit the sugar intake. And by lower carb, it's really lower sugar is really what I should say, because I eat a lot of vegetables, like literally daily. Yeah. And I eat a lot of protein and fat. And I think that's what the majority of people want.
Yeah, that's what the majority of people need too.
Yeah,
They're
they
not
want
high-level athletes that demand tons and tons of glycogen for their daily activities. Most people would be fine on steak, chicken, pork,
Right.
and then the occasional sweet potato, broccoli,
Right,
asparagus,
exactly.
all that stuff.
Yeah, so my typical, like if I were to test my my blood ketones in the morning, they're almost always 0.3, which is not in ketosis. You know,
Yeah,
mild,
just below that threshold.
mild is 0.5.
Right.
But most people would probably be at like 0. You know.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the average American would be at 0.
Yeah. That just means you're just kind of lower carb. And I've definitely tested and been at 0.6 and things of that sort just randomly. But frankly, it's not usual. I might be at 0.2, 0.3. It just means, you know, lower carb.
Yeah. And then with improving children's nutrition and health, y'all have recently started the Farm Initiative.
Yeah, Farmacy Initiative.
Farmacy Initiative,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit about that and how you got started with it and what was the catalyst for wanting to start it?
Yeah, the catalyst, the inspiration was Ron Finley. I said was, but is Ron Finley. So this guy is a self-proclaimed gangster gardener. Now, he started in South Central LA, and he has a TED Talk, and he has millions of views. And essentially what he did is he planted his front yard, and people were walking by and grabbing whatever it was, like let's say the fruit off of the tree or the vegetable out of the garden, and they're kind of embarrassed, right? It's, you know, taking food.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you embarrassed? He said, it's in my front yard. Like, it's in my front yard for a reason.
So right? I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. When we used to live in Louisiana, we had in the subdivision we lived in, there was a couple that had a kumquat tree in their front yard, and every time we'd walk, Sandy and I would go on a walk, she'd go across and snag a couple of the kumquats, and we'd just keep going. She said, well, it shouldn't be. They shouldn't have it in their front yard if they don't want people taking it.
Right.
So, all right, go ahead.
So my life's mission is to put food in the front yard. That's it. So Ron Finley was inspiration, and like for example, I'm in SoCal or Southern California, and like for example, we'll have like palm trees down the median, right, of like a subdivision or a street, you know, a new street or with new construction or things of that sort. Why isn't that an apple tree? Like, I don't want to say why anymore. I want an apple tree.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. I want to do it. So let's say there's a new subdivision again in Southern California. You can choose like what stove you want. You can choose like what baseboards you want, maybe something like that. But you don't have the option of choosing like let's say a vegetable patch, like a garden, like a box, like a like a wood raised bed, for example. Why? Like so. I don't want to ask why anymore. I want to advocate for that builder to have, a cedar box option. And you can either choose it or not as the owner, but at least it's an option provided. As kids walk to school, I don't see them like picking, pears off of trees or kumquats out of trees. I want to not talk about it. I want to do it. So I want to personally pay for it. And I think that's my role. It's my role, my responsibility, and our company's responsibility to leave the earth a better place. Right? So I have a responsibility to your children, not just my own. It's not about me. So so we started a Farmacy Initiative to pay for gardens in schools. So, we go in there and, we build the whole garden, the whole school comes out, the kids stick their hands in the earth because we believe that when, you stick your hands in the earth, that you care about the earth. That proximity to an issue leads to caring about an issue.
Right.
So if your hands are in the earth, you recycle. If your hands are in the earth, you don't waste water because you realize that plastic in your food is contrary, is anathema to, a healthy life.
Correct.
That sun that, isn't clouded from pollution, air pollution, and that the water that's leading to, a healthy vegetable garden shouldn't be wasted.
Right.
That proximity to that issue. So we believe in kind of, I would call it from my colleague Robert, trickle up instead of trickle down. Adults might not, want to eat well or change their ways, but kids don't care. Like kids who plant kale eat kale.
Yeah.
So plant kale. This is it. So we believe in trickling up. So invest in the kids. So we believe in in Whole Foods and then planting those foods and paying for that. Like, who's going to pay for that? We are.
Right.
Now, we also live in a curriculum associated. We realize that the schools don't even have a curriculum. So you plant the garden and no one has an actual method by which of maintaining and continuing.
That was going to be my next question. Is once y'all initiate it, do y'all go back and keep nurturing it to keep it growing, or is it gone up to the school at that point?
It's up to the school. So you got to make sure that you have a champion at that school. So we realized, oh my gosh, we personally have to make the curriculum. So we're in process right now of making a curriculum, and then we're going to publicize that globally.
Fascinating.
So every school in the world can literally just take it right off of the web. And I don't know if you know the Khan Academy, K-H-A-N.
Yeah. My wife is a teacher. She's told me about it.
Right. So that guy's one of my idols. Literally, his name is Sal Khan. He doesn't know me at all. I don't know him, but the point is, the guy's brilliant. I love it. It's not like I'm like taking Sal to lunch by any stretch.
Right.
But my point is, I really, I idolize that guy because he literally took education, put it online for free, and it's brilliant.
Yes.
We're gonna do that for gardening. Same dang thing. Because when you're talking about a garden, you gotta ask your neighbor. Then you got to go to Sunset Magazine. Then you got to go to YouTube video, and then you got to go to your gardening store.
Yeah, a local nursery or something.
Your nursery. Ask like what flower works in the sunshine and what doesn't work in the sunshine, direct sunlight. Not. It's just. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
But if you go to Khan Academy and you just want to know algebra, there's a tag that says, wait for it, algebra. Right? It's super simple. Like, why don't we have something that says gardening? It says flowers for the sunshine, flowers for the shade,
Yeah, make something simple to understand.
Make it simple for the love, right? I'm in an urban environment. Can I grow tomatoes?
Right.
Yes, you can. Here's how you do it. I'm in a suburban environment. How do I do it? Just make it simple. So who's going to pay for it? Who's going to do that? We are. This is our responsibility. So we want, to change human nutrition from carbs to fat, carbs to protein, sugar, this to basically protein and fat via whole foods, via hands in the earth, and children.
Very admirable.
Yeah.
Very admirable.
Yeah.
I'm probably whenever that gets written and uploaded, let me know, because I've killed basil, I've killed mint, I've killed rosemary, and a lime tree. I've got the blackest thumbs possible. Yet my mom and grandma can grow basil in the cracks of their driveway. I don't know how it is. They would have these bushes just sprouting up everywhere, and every time I go see them, I'd walk away with a bushel full of some kind of herb or something to cook with. But we've tried to grow things, and it never works.
Yeah, they're like vegetable whisperers.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Maybe I'm just not old enough or something. It doesn't work for 30-something-year-olds. You got to be 50 plus and 60 plus for it to work.
And I have the same thing. It's not like I have like decades of experience, gardening.
Yeah.
It's more like it's a belief system and a need, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna fill the need. So I plan on learning from it too, and having people who, know what they're doing, launch the website and help build it continually and get feedback and have this be, the lifelong mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Continuing on with the low carb stuff, y'all have made Go BHBs. Where are y'all positioning that in the industry, and how are y'all approaching that? When y'all come out with an ingredients, because Go BHB is relatively new on the scene, within the last 12 to 18 months, I would say. When a new ingredient debuts, do y'all go out to the supplement companies to get them to do it? And it's outside of just sports nutrition, but are you going into other kind of functional food categories, or bars and things of that nature, where there's whole food bars or meal replacement bars and stuff like that? So how do you start to get those ingredients into the forefront of the public eye and the ingredients or the supplement companies' minds too?
Yeah. Because we're not started from scratch, so it's a little different from someone who's just like, oh man, how do I get X ingredient to all these companies? To be honest, that's our secret sauce, right? That's what we do. We're the commercialization partner. Now, how do we do that? What is that secret sauce? Well, it's about various angles, but one is hand-to-hand combat. You literally just talk to individual people who are super, super innovative, who are early adopters. The other is, you can broadcast, your launch out to your audience,
Yeah, through social media or
social media,
commercials on the internet. And
yeah,
stuff like
exactly.
That. Trade shows too. I guess.
Exactly, trade shows. So it's a little bit of all of those,
Mhm.
and then it's about making sure that what they need is there.
Mhm.
So like it's not just the ingredient; it's how do I use it.
Right.
And that was kind of at the beginning of the podcast. It was like, do you just tell them like to just have at it with TeaCrine being bitter? No, or Pico 2, being earthy or whatever. No, we say, hey, here's the ingredient. Here's the cost per dose.
Mhm.
Here's how you use it. Here's maybe some complementary ingredients, and here's potential formulation issues from a taste standpoint.
Yeah.
So it's a comprehensive talk.
Mhm.
Right? It's not just, hey, it's in stock, it's really cool, you should buy it.
Yeah. Where y'all are, so obviously the manufacturing facility for all of these ingredients isn't in California, where the offices of Compound Solutions are.
Mm-hmm.
Where is each individual ingredient separate with the different manufacturer? Do y'all all have them under one house, or are they spread across the world kind of thing, or is that, I don't even know if that's something you want to get into.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, so
Mhm.
like our, CBD is stateside,
Mhm.
Colorado, Pico 2s in California,
Mhm.
manufactured in California, TeaCrine is in China, a lot of ingredients, like just globally, dietary supplements, everything. The manufacturing powerhouse in the world is China.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about your luggage or your vitamin C, it's largely made in China.
Right.
So it's a mixed bag for us. It's like China and the States, and I think we have a couple other countries involved.
Mhm.
I'd have to go through our ingredients like one by one. I think we have one in Europe, and it's a longer story. But the point is, it's a mixed bag. But we and most people,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of China.
Interesting. What is new, or what I guess is in the works of Compound? Y'all Vaso 6 is probably one of the newest ones that has come out.
Yep.
And how's the reception, I guess, with that been? And then do y'all have a few other things in the works? You don't have to say what they are now, but are there a couple of other ingredients that you've kind of got earmarked and saying, yeah, that's 6 months down the line, that's 12 months down the line? How does that go with the release of new ingredients? Do y'all have it staggered out or is it more of, hey, you just kind of come across this and you jump on it immediately and get it out as quick as you can?
Yeah, so we definitely have a pipeline. We are absolutely 100% always, we at no time, I would say in the last 5 years, at no time have I not had something else going on. Mm-hmm. Always, and that's part of my job.
Yeah,
I call it, when people use the word business development differently, but I use business development as kind of one of my majority roles, which is what are we going to sell? Yeah. I read sales is just selling what you already have.
Right.
So in that context, business development is really important to me in the company. Mm-hmm. So actually we have a pipeline of ingredients right now this second. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes, something will pop up that is kind of more urgent to get out. Mm-hmm. And that would be like, let's say, a fat powder, for example. So we have a Go Fat series of ketogenic friendly fat powders, and we have a couple in the works right now that I went, oh my gosh, like I gotta do this rapidly. Mm-hmm. So that would be a fast scale up over a couple months versus something else that could really take a year or two.
That's what I was going to be my next question is how long does it take to, let's say you partner up with the IP holder of a particular ingredient. What is generally the timeline from meeting, shaking hands with them, and coming to an agreement to where the consumer actually sees it in their products? Yeah,
I would say the average would probably be somewhere where the consumer sees it in a product, because then you got to have the ingredient, and then you got to supply, sell the ingredient, formulation. Like the marketer has to believe in it, and the marketer has to formulate flavor, sweeten, put it in the bottle, then put it on Amazon or GNC. Right. So all of that takes time. So I would say on average that's probably like year and a half, 2 years, probably something like that. Yeah. I would say the maximum will probably be 3 years, and then probably the minimum from like a new ingredient to an actual product, that would probably be like 6 months. That would be absolutely lightning speed. Yeah. So I guess Vaso 6, how long was that before? Because we've seen that for maybe 6 to
to 8 months now.
Yeah.
As a mainstream product, because I know one or two companies had it early on, but it's really picked up probably within the last 6 months, 6 to 8 months.
It took probably a year
Mhm.
to get that off the ground.
Yeah.
And that was because of various things. Like, one is you're getting your content right. In
Right.
other words, you got to have a why. Like,
Yeah, you have to have the message behind why people should switch to this alternative ingredient over what they're using now.
Exactly. So, like, for example, why buy Nikes versus Adidas?
Mhm.
You got to have a why. All right, so Vaso 6. Why Vaso 6 over, like, let's say, citrulline and arginine? You know? So, we were talking about that. So, to get that message out is, super critical. It takes time to understand what are the objections and what content do we need to put together. So, like, that is, I think, super important. And the reason why I think it's starting to grow is people are realizing, gosh, since Eno Explode came out with arginine AKG 15 years ago, we've been attacking the urea cycle, right? So that's, arginine, citrulline, and ornithine.
Mhm.
And so, people have tried to, alter that, by all different, constituents. It's like arginine alpha-ketoglutarate, arginine hydrochloride, arginine base, arginine, and inositol silicate, whatever that is.
Yeah, there's arginine nitrate. There's
arginine nitrate.
6 different forms of citrulline.
There's
citrulline malate.
Citrulline malate, citrate, all this sort of stuff, ornithine hydrochloride, all this sort of stuff.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you're attacking the urea cycle.
Right.
And so our point is that you can stimulate, NO, nitric oxide, but you really want your veins to be, supple, right? You want them to be, flexible hoses, not like steel pipes.
Right.
So let's say you take a vasodilator, potentially, like a blood flow, or like a nitric oxide ingredient, like an arginine or a citrulline. Let's take citrulline because that's more popular.
Yeah.
Take a citrulline. And then you take a vasoconstrictor, like caffeine.
Mhm.
Well, it's it's potentially true. That's what you have is an increase in blood flow without a relaxation of the vein. The endothelial dependent relaxation doesn't happen at the rate of, like, let's say, Vaso 6. So you end up with more blood going through a non-expanded vein. So there's an increase in blood pressure.
Correct.
In other words, your heart is working harder, but you want to work your muscles, not your heart.
Yeah.
So the point is, like, the constituents within Vaso 6, these polyphenolic, compounds, these galley-enhanced oligomers, so-called of green tea, are super potent to not just induce, nitric oxide synthase, but also, vaso relaxation.
Yeah.
So you end up with, let's say, a potential decrease in blood pressure, as well as, an increase in blood flow and nitric oxide.
Yeah.
So it's both, for blood flow and, quote, pump for sports nutrition, but also for, heart health.
Right.
And some of these compounds are in, like, for example, dark chocolate or, red wine. Some of these things that everyone's kind of familiar with, heart health. We've just concentrated all the goodness into a really potent, Vaso 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the original discoveries for Vaso 6 were using grapeseed.
Right.
But y'all are extracting from green tea now. So
Right.
why switch over to green tea? What's the cost of that? I mean, I'm assuming green tea leaves are probably cheaper to extract from or easier to extract from than grape seeds.
Yeah.
But yeah, explain a little bit more about that, because some people might be confused where they see that the discovery of these compounds were first in grape seeds, but they're also found in green tea. But
so the truth is that it was easier, so the extraction was easier. But we are working on grapeseed, to be honest. So what you're doing is you're looking at those powerful oligomers, those powerful, constituents within these plants, and essentially, concentrating those, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And you can get those from various plants, just what you just said, grapeseed versus, green tea. So the point is ease, ease of manufacture.
Right.
So we're working on that alternative. But yeah, hopefully it's not too confusing where, the original biomass is just different due to.
But the end result is the same. It's just the origin of extraction.
Right.
When a company wants to use Vaso 6 or Go BHB or any of the products that y'all put out, how does that? Do they call you up and say, all right, we're ready to start putting this in our products, and then do y'all just have crates of the stuff just lying around a warehouse, and y'all ship them the product so they can put it with their manufacturer? Or do they just go straight to your manufacturer and source it from them? How does that whole process go about?
Yeah, just a little bit of the supply chain. Just quickly, and it's, from a consumer standpoint, I think this is probably interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, briefly, the supply chain, we buy it from the manufacturer. And again, we just said it could be a California, a Colorado, a China, whatever. But the bottom line is, we buy it from the manufacturer. Before we've done that, we've had to, audit, make sure that manufacturer is good, that you can scale up, that the actual product tastes okay, that it mixes in water or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That goes into a capsule or the dose or, all these sorts of things you're working on in advance, okay? Once that's all worked out, then you bring it in the United States. At that time, hopefully you've worked out all the other regulatory stuff, right? We went over that. It was like you spent $500,000 to, work on toxicity data or clinical trials or whatever. But let's say that's all done, right? You've all done that. So we're, again, buying it from, let's say, China. It comes into California. It goes into your warehouse. You've hopefully generated some content.
Yeah.
So that means content means like a reason why someone should even use your stuff.
Right.
Like in a pre-workout. You should use it in my pre-workout because you're a pre-workout because, it is great for, let's say, power and endurance. Like, all right, sweet. Let's try it. So then you send a sample. They try it and literally determine with their athletes, internally, whatever, if they like the taste, like the flavor, and whether or not it actually works in practice. Not just the clinical trial. They then say, yes, I want it. We then have a warehouse full of it, like you just said. Let's say it's several thousand kilos.
Yeah.
And they're in drums, like 25-kilo drums, like 55-pound drums.
Right.
So think of like a big barrel. You ship that barrel on a pallet. It goes to a contract manufacturer. And that manufacturer literally has, a forklift. And they weigh out, let's say the pre-workout has like, let's say 10 items, right? So they weigh out those 10 items, one of which is, let's say, let's say a few, like, you got like Pico 2, Vaso 6, and TeaCrine in the product, let's just say. You weigh those out, you grab this pallet of now, like, weighed out stuff.
Yeah.
You lift it up on top of, like, I would call it almost like a balcony. And there's a stair to that balcony. You have workers that go up to that balcony, and they're literally with, like let's say a box cutter, cutting open the drums, cut open the bag. They dump it into a giant blender. So think of like a Cuisinart, right?
Yeah.
A giant Cuisinart. But on top of the Cuisinart are these little tiny holes, and that's what sifts these materials because you want to make sure there are no foreign materials.
Okay.
Right. So one, we have to have good quality, right? In our Vaso 6 or in our TeaCrine or any other ingredient, you can't have any foreign materials. You can't have heavy metals and all that stuff. We have to test for that, screen all that prior. Well, you also don't want to cut open one of the bags and have a piece of plastic fall into the blender, into the Cuisinart.
Right.
So there's actually a sifter on top of the Cuisinart. So you dump the material into this, on top of this, like, sifter that has little holes in it. So the ingredients go in, but the plastic doesn't, for example. It then goes into the blender. You shut it. It then starts blending over, depends on what kind of a blender, but it could blend anywhere from like 1 minute to 20 minutes, and you get a homogeneous blend, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that easy, but anyway, homogeneous means everything is evenly dispersed, right? Your flavor, like, you don't want Vaso 6 in one part of the blender, and you have Go BHB in the other part of the blender.
Yeah.
You've got to be evenly dispersed, so every scoop is equal in your pre-workout, for example. You then discharge. The workers then walk back down the stairs. This blender is raised on stilts, essentially, so it's off the ground. So you're now under the blender with a big old bag. And the big old bag is on, essentially like arms, essentially. And you just dump like 1,000 kilos, like 2,200 pounds, for example, into this gigantic bag called a super sack. It flies down. While it's flying down, it's, sometimes you can have like a metal, a piece, like a very it's a magnet, like a rare earth magnet, like a very, very powerful magnet.
Yeah.
In case there were any sort of metal shavings or anything that came from like a blender or anything like that. Oftentimes that's there. So as it's flying down, you know, all that powder through that hole into that big super sac. You're making sure there's no foreign materials in there. Again, like for like that's probably the fourth time you've like made sure there's no foreign materials.
Yeah.
Like it's really intense, right? To make sure that's cool. Someone then takes that straight from the bag. Again, think gloves. Everyone's in booties. Everyone has hats on. You know.
Yeah, it looks like a surgeon going into
It's
the
a
OR.
surgeon. Yeah, exactly. Surgeon going to the OR. Thinking of that. You actually take that product. You walk it over to a lab. You put it in water and you taste it to see if that matches the control. Because your pre-workout was, let's say, orange mango. Right. Oh, let's do one that's, sorry, let's do a funny pre-workout one. Blue ras. Okay.
Oh, God, the one flavor I absolutely despise.
We got to say, we got to, if we're shouting out sports nutrition, we got to say blue ras. It's got to be blue ras. So you literally have the control because you made a lab sample of blue ras.
Yeah.
So you literally have the control. 8 ounces, you have your scoop, you take it right out of the bag, straight from the blender, you dump it in 8 ounces of water, you taste one against the other, and you see if it's good. You go, yes, it's good, fantastic. You're not done. You then have to send it to a lab to make sure that the citrulline is in there, because you can't actually send the bottle with a label that says 6 grams of citrulline or 300 grams of Baso 6 or 100 milligrams of TeaCrine, and it's not in there. That's illegal.
Correct.
So now you got to send it out for testing and make sure that analytically, because you already know what's in there from what you added physically.
Correct.
You know you added 100 milligrams of TeaCrine, but no one cares what you added. You have to prove it analytically. So then you got to. So that's why labs in this country have an unlimited amount of business forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Every single lot, every single time, you have to prove that what you added is actually there. Because no one cares what you say.
Yeah, it's what you can prove.
Is what you can prove.
I think I know, just figured out my next business venture. I'm going to open up a testing.
But that testing equipment is super expensive. So then you finally, after all that, and you prove that it's in there, and you've also proved that there are no micros, you then bottle it with a label. You ship it off to the customer. The customer then ships it to GNC or Amazon, and the consumer gets it. And that right there, you could cut and make that a single podcast.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull that little clip out, and that'll be the teaser for this one. That's insane. I don't think anybody's ever heard that before. That is, wow. That's awesome. Last couple things I'll get you, because I know y'all probably need to get going soon, and I've monopolized enough of your time. How competitive? We know how competitive the actual supplement market is, with one company's pre-workout or protein powder or intra-workout going against the others. How competitive is it from an ingredient supplier's point of view, like you and some of the other competitors? I won't name any of them because I want people to go to your company, obviously. But how, is it as annus as the supplement industry seems sometimes, or you on good terms with the people that own those companies? Do you even know them, or how is that? Are y'all jockeying for the same kind of compounds and to get the rights to use those, or?
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely 100%. Both. I mean, absolutely. So if you're talking commodities, I mean, it is dog eat dog, right? And there's not margin. Yeah. So it's really absolutely fierce. If you're talking patented with a little bit larger margins, well then, yeah, you're basically arguing over, kind of science and other, parts, like, price and the formula, the science and the benefit associated with that. So there are other things other than just price, because a commodity is just price and availability. Yeah. That's about it, maybe a relationship. Right. Now this is a little bit of price, availability, and science, and then some of the other parameters in a relationship. You don't want to burn bridges. Right. So the fact is, I know all these guys, and they all know me, and we're basically friendly competitors. Okay. And so some, can be a little bit more dog eat dog, right? Because one ingredient is going directly over, TeaCrine can be going, directly against another one, and you're just kind of warring over that, that one product. Yeah. And it's true that, that can happen. But in the grand scheme, No, man, our company doesn't war with other companies.
Yeah.
We, try to, maintain, let's call it friendly competition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the last 15 years, I've had people pretty much try to knock off and copy everything we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a nightmare. So we do have to get into some legal battles.
Yeah.
But that's
Everybody's
usually
gonna do that, I'm sure.
that's usually like a patent issue.
Mm-hmm.
But like normal business, no. Like we are pretty much friendly with every quote unquote competitor.
Yeah.
And it's pragmatic. Like no one wants to do business with like bad, like mean people.
Right.
Part of business is just honestly just being nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, second last question. What is your daily supplement regimen or stack?
Yeah.
You said you're a user, so what is your daily supplement usage entail?
Okay. My first is vitamin D and magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just older, I'm
Mm-hmm.
Basically 42 now, and in this industry that just means I'm kind of like the cool grandpa. I'm kind of old, and I got that from a friend, Don Gray. So I'm stealing his phrase right there. But anyway, the point is I'm older, so certain things decline with age.
Mm-hmm.
So magnesium tends to be lacking in the American diet.
Yep.
And it's very well used by in many metabolic processes in the body. So magnesium, and then vitamin D, because it's an anti-inflammatory, immune booster, and things of that sort. And I try to sleep as much as I can, but frankly I don't get maybe as much sleep as I'd like to, and so anyway, the point is you got to have an immune booster, and I don't get sick hardly at all,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's attributable to healthy eating and vitamin D.
Okay.
And then the other is I take a pre-workout
Mm-hmm.
with TeaCrine.
Okay. Any particular one, or you kind of rotate through them?
I kind of rotate, but I take I take very little of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to have let's say 100 to 150 milligrams
Mm-hmm.
of a pre-workout with TeaCrine, something like that.
Okay.
That means I'm half dosing every time.
Right.
Plus I don't want to keep it. I don't want my adrenals to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm older, so I typically low dose it.
Okay.
And even if I'm going, if let's say I'm traveling and I grab a Red Bull, I always grab like the 80 milligram, 8-ounce one.
Right.
Yesterday we had, I had a meltdown that's 250 milligrams of caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
That's way more than I typically have.
Yeah.
So I sipped it for all day.
Of course.
Oh yeah, it was all day. It was from noon to midnight. Yeah. So yeah, that's all day, and I took 2 capsules of TeaCrine. That's what I did. I took a TeaCrine capsule at noon
Mm-hmm.
with some of the meltdown.
Yeah.
And I took one another time when we were driving here, and that was probably at 10 o'clock at night, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had 250 mg, that was.
You're able to milk it the whole day.
I milked it literally the entire day.
Yeah.
And typically, I don't typically have 250 in an entire day,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. It's not a.
Wow, I think most people would be shocked to hear that. Just somebody that runs as many hours throughout the day as you do, and just with typical caffeine intake of most people, that's 250 is definitely on the low end.
Yeah, in
for
a day.
The average person.
Yeah. And I think it's because I'm sensitive, but also I think it's because TeaCrine, is non-habituating in and of itself.
Right.
And we haven't proved this clinically, but what's insane is that despite the fact that I'm still taking caffeine on a regular basis,
mm-hmm.
I can still feel an 80 milligram Red Bull.
Yeah.
But why? Because clinically that shouldn't be the case. If I'm taking caffeine almost daily, I should be habituating to that, and I shouldn't be able to feel that anymore.
Right.
And I believe that TeaCrine is helping with that.
Blunt the tolerance.
It's blunting the tolerance to the actual caffeine itself. And one day we're going to try to prove that clinically, because that's all anecdotal.
I wonder how could you prove that?
That's a
Dr.
Hector Lopez and Dragonfoot question. Yeah.
He'll be one of the next guests on here. I need to email Dr. Hector. It's been a couple months since I've touched base with him. He needs to get on here next.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What do you envision for Compound within the next 5 years? Where do you think its place is in the sports nutrition realm? And what do you want people to think of Compound Solutions when they hear the name?
Yeah, man, that's a big one. I want people to think trust and credibility.
Mm-hmm.
trust means we tell the truth. Credibility means we know what we're talking about, and we did the things that led to that credibility. In other words, like in a clinical study.
Yeah.
So I want people to think trust and credibility. I want people to think that we cared.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we didn't sell smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And that we're here for a reason,
mm-hmm.
and that's to maximize human potential.
Yeah.
Cognitively and physically. So that we didn't sell out and sell something because we just wanted to make $1,
mm-hmm.
that we made $1 making a difference,
yeah.
you know, cognitively or physically.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to, in the end, think of us as the people who tried to change, you know, human nutrition from sugar to protein, fat, and carbs through fiber and vegetables
mm-hmm.
through the Farmacy Initiative. I think that's ultimately the legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome, Matt. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think y'all are doing incredible things and leading the next generation of awesome ingredients that we're going to see in the industry. And, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.